My work is grounded, embedded in a practice called psychosynthesis. And psychosynthesis is a psychology of the spirit and the soul, and it's a real blend of psyche and everything to do with psyche, including the ego, and it also has a very deeply spiritual dimension. My name's Alex Hatfield, and I'm from the north of England, and I live in the Lake District. Over the last 8-9 years have developed a practice called eco-psychosynthesis, which is really a practice of being deeply in relationship with oneself, one's inner world, and the world of nature. But when we talk about nature in soul making in nature, we talk about it as life taking form, and then those forms disintegrating. So we've got this continuous cycle, this continuous repetition of birth, life, death, rebirth. And that happens not only in the psyche, but it happens very clearly and obviously in nature. If you consider that our psyches are from nature, literally from the natural world, they've been brought up, raised, evolved within this planet that we call Earth. And therefore what soul making in nature is it's that relationship between being an embodied conscious being and being an embodied conscious being in the world that we live in, with all of its forms and all of its disintegration and all of its rebirths. So I'm really, really pleased and excited to be joined today by my good friend, fellow psychosynthesis practitioner, and all-around awesome person, Magnus. And Magnus and I we work together at Soul Making in Nature along with others. Magnus is one of our lead guides, and he holds space at Soul Making in Nature. And he's also what we call one of our guardians at the threshold, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Magnus and I have both got quite a deep soul making in nature practice already established, which is also integrated into our psychosynthesis way of being and way of thinking. So Magnus, I'm just really curious about, how your practice is on a daily basis and how you might describe soul making in nature for yourself.
I like to say that it started when I was a child and teenager, by kind of intuitively being drawn towards the stones, the big boulders and the trees, and I found that they helped me in my day-to-day life to guide me, and I wasn't very conscious about it, but as an adult I realized that it started very early. And then I've come back to it as an adult with a bit more awareness around it. That's how it started.
Me, I think soul making is a practice. I think it has to be consciously not thought about, because that's the wrong word, because it's deeper than thought, but intuited almost. Last week when you sent me that little video of the book and the wind, I wonder if you could just talk about that a little bit, because for me that's a really clear example of soul in presence in the mundane.
Yeah, I was just walking the dog locally in London where I live, and I always sort of pay attention to nature, but also what's lying around on the streets. And I felt a bit, I felt a bit lost and a bit down that day. I couldn't quite explain why, and there was an old book lying on the ground that someone had just put out, and I looked at it, and it was open, and then a gust of wind came, so the first page kind of opened up, and it just said Goddess. And we always joke about that, and I thought, oh, this is so beautiful, and I managed to capture it as well, and it was that funny everyday magic, really.
And that's it, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's that everyday magic. You know, even though we go to beautiful places in soul making nature. You know, we go to the Lake District, we go to other places which are what you might class as traditional nature. We can find the veil of soul making. We can find soul making in nature on the streets in London through a discarded book.
Yeah.
And I think that's the real key to this work, is can we be present enough in the everyday to be able to find those soulful moments? Because somebody else who didn't have a practice like this could have walked past that book and just gone, oh, why didn't somebody put that in the bin, you know? But I think there's just something about, the presence that we invite in through being in relationship with the soul that brings moments like that to us. Yeah.
And you've been with me sometime as well. We have there's lots of parks around where I live. It's a bit of a walking distance, but just around the corner there are some council estates, and there's a handful of trees between on a grassy bit. You wouldn't really call it a park, but it's like a little patch of nature. And I have that as my kind of local sacred bit of nature, because it's literally 2 minutes away. It's very quiet usually. So when I go there with the dog, as I enter the kind of park, there's a gate. So I have that as a threshold. So when I walk out through that gate, I try to kind of enter more into an altered state and look at the world a little bit more childlike, if you like. I think Jung called it participation mystique.
Yeah.
And I just let nature, I just pay attention to how I feel my body with my senses, what I notice in this place where I walk every day, really. And there's not much going on there at first sight, but then there's always some animal that comes up, or I notice some plant or something with the trees. And I had so many poetic experiences there, and you've been with me there once as well. And it just brings huge comfort and meaning and guidance to my life. And it's it's like riding a bike. It's very much just like a part of my everyday life, you know. And it's more accessible than going, when I go to the Buddhist center, or you go to like a retreat or something, that's great as well, but to have it in your day-to-day life in a kind of casual way like that, that's what I want to support people to cultivate.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, that is part of soul making in nature, because, Fee's doing the everyday sacred little vlogs. And I mean, you talk about the threshold as well, and we talk about the title that we give to the guides, to the lead guides at Soul Making in Nature, and the facilitators as guardians at the threshold. And if when people come on an event that we're running a training, or it's a community event, or it's part of the rites of passage work that we do, the threshold it can be a very physical place, like you mentioned, but what we're really wanting people to embrace is this idea that they can literally take a step into soul, into their own deeper nature, and that threshold is always available to them. It's a psychic threshold. Maybe it's time to kind of talk a little bit more about the foundations for soul making in nature, and the three, we call them pillars, but I know we like to also say that they're spirals.
The first then is that about what skills and sensibilities are necessary for this more soul engaged way of life. And I'm thinking about our backgrounds and everything. Yeah, because psychosynthesis is deeply rooted in soul making, really, as a practice, as a psychological practice. But I think that as the eco-psychosynthesis has been evolving and developing over these last 8-9 years, there's a couple of things that have become really important, I think, for me as a practitioner. Because we hold groups, we hold trainings,
We hold experiences over 18 months, a year, 18 months, where others can engage in developing their own soul-making in nature practices. And those practices are not, they're for people, for themselves, but more so, they're for people who want to hold space for others. So I think the first thing is, if we think about the modern world, and you asked about the kind of the sensitivity and the sensibility that we might need, I think that there's a lot missing from the modern world in terms of our relationship with something deeper. Something deeper than going shopping, or something deeper, not that there's anything wrong with going shopping, by the way, I love shopping, but something deeper than our mundane everyday world. And I like to think of this in relation to, the psychologist Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. It's like once we've got these basic needs of survival met, we move on to these more nuanced and even altruistic and deeply spiritual places in ourselves, where we search for what self might mean on a deeper level, what spirit might mean, what soul might mean. And I think if you were to have any kind of, I think you need to be sensitive to that in soul making in nature, because there's a lot of people who actualize in the world, which looks like having the car and the house and the kids and the whatever that normal, so-called normal might be, and yet there's also this lack of deep meaning in life. And what we can offer in the work that we do is this place where we can come into relationship more with the living life force that's all around us, that's in a plant, in a shirt, in a cup, that's everywhere, that can help us to really be in relationship.
We always said as well in our psychosynthesis training that it's more a training of the being, although there was lots of academic stuff as well. It was really helpful. It was more about paying attention to our felt sense in our body, the images that comes up for us, what's the experience between us. There's something about that.
And with soul making in nature, I think we extend that out. So we extend that out of the therapy room, out of the relationship between human beings, into the relationship between the natural world, the more than human world, and we give them equal standing. The tree is as important. Relationship with a tree is as important as relationship with a human. And if we can really live that, I mean, we can solve some of these ecological crises that are present in the world, because we're not seeing it as commodity anymore. We're seeing it, as you said, as being, as a being with a life, with some form of psyche. We are offering training, and I think what we are offering in the training is very much based in practice and practical application of soul making in nature. And you think about our own psychotherapy practices. We're in a room, we're online, and again, not that there's anything wrong with that. However, the work is about bringing that out into the environment, and it's bringing the environment out there into us more. So there's this reciprocity. And like you said earlier, it can be in simple things like finding that local park, or the message in the book cover fluttering open. And we do have some very clear practices that we teach in the training, and yet we also want to take the sort of the therapeutic element of the work into bigger groups, into more than just two people sitting in a room working through past trauma or childhood issues. And if I go back to the true root of the word therapy, as in, I mean, if you kind of,
attending to the soul,
caring for the soul, And I think that's the big thing about the training. It's like, how do we care for the soul, but not just the human soul? If we think that the world is ensouled, which is a belief, but it's also part of how I live. You know, to me, the world isn't completely ensouled, and that includes everything, because everything comes from nature. There isn't anything on this planet that doesn't come from the natural world. So I think there's something in that that needs to be present in our current times. So Magnus, we've spoken about the training side of it, and the second pillar or the second spiral is modern rites of passage, which we've got a history in, really, with what came before soul making in nature. Yeah.
So why is ceremony important in modern life?
Yeah. There's something about ceremony being important because it's how we used to connect to the liminal. So the liminal is about entering into when more than one or more people come together, and we enter into a space consciously and with intent, a space where something else can evolve, something else can be born of that community and that togetherness. And of course, rites of passage traditionally were part of that world. They marked a transition from one state of being to another. I mean, traditionally it would be things like, moving from childhood to adulthood, or going into a relationship with someone, or a death even. And I think modern rites of passage, they exist, but we don't pay attention to them. So we still have these transitions, we still have to come into an adult life, we still have to actualize again in the world, but we have less and less and less ways of doing that within community and in a very conscious, ecological and psychological way. And I think what I'd like to do and what soul making in nature is wanting to do with the rites of passage work, is to bring that into a modern context. We're not living in a tribal community anymore, but bring it into a modern context and really deal with and face into some of the challenges of that. I mean, I know for me, for example, as a woman who's moving deeper into her midlife, it's a challenge. There's a lot being lost. There's a lot being gained as well. Yeah, but it's about that whole, how can we be together in that? How can my experience influence yours and yours influence mine? And how can we not only educate and support each other in those transitions, but how can we also invite in the liminal, the unknown, the soulful, the spiritual into that, and make it sacred again, rather than something to be avoided.
And I mean, you spoke about transitions through life cycle, but I'm thinking like what's right in front of our noses is just the seasons.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Exactly.
And, Christmas and Easter, and we have all this. It's going to become a bit devoid of what it used to be for thousands of years for us.
Yeah.
So that's also something we kind of try to bring into our life and encourage other people to pay attention to. How do you feel? How does it feel now when it's autumn? What comes up in me, and can we get into that?
Yeah.
What comes up for you?
Yeah, and I like what you're saying, because it brings in. I mean, we were talking earlier about, when we were talking about the idea of nature being life-taking form, and you said to me, yes, and there's death there too. And I think that is really quite a big part of the rites of passage work, because we kind of, in our modern world, avoid death. It's seen as, death's seen as something quite final and it ends and it's final. And of course, with nature, as you've just mentioned, the cycle shows us something completely different. In every ending is a beginning, in every beginning is an ending. If I look down the end of the garden, even into where there's, end of the garden, I've got the oak tree and a rowan, and there's the leaf litter from last year still there.
That is quite something. And to bring it more personal as well, I'm curious what ceremony that you've had in your life has really sort of stayed with you or been really impacted? Because I know you've done all kinds of things, but it'd be nice to hear something like personal.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there's been so many ceremonies. It's part of who I am. I am a ceremonialist, and I've attended ceremony, and I've been facilitated ceremony for many years. When you asked me that, there was a memory that came to mind, and I used to live in Yorkshire, and there was a place in Yorkshire just outside Huddersfield called Castle Hill. And I remember way back when I used to run an organisation called Goddess Within, and we used to meet at all of the different, the sort of neo-pagan festivals, and one of them was Letha, or the summer solstice. And I can remember holding a fire ceremony on top of this hill, and it's a little bit like Yorkshire's version of Glastonbury Tour. And actually, I can remember just after ceremony, we'd had a fire ceremony, we'd kind of, the sun had set. We did a sunset ceremony rather than a sunrise ceremony, which was contentious for the summer solstice. But I remember just sitting there on the side of this hill, and the sun had set in the east, in the west, and the moon at the same time was rising in the east. This utter sense, this utter, deeply precious sense of both a cycle and a still point. And there was just something incredibly profound about that, which I don't think I would have had if we hadn't have just been in the ceremony. I think if I'd have just gone up there to, sit on the hill, watch the sunrise, watch the sunset and watch the moon rise, I don't think I would have had that deeply profound sense of both a cycle, the rising and the falling of the sun, and the rising and the falling of the moon, and then me just sat there on the earth in the middle of that, being witness. Yeah.
And I see your body language as well, and it's like it's like it's happening now again almost. It's like a reminder.
It is a reminder, and it's deeply embodied. It is. I feel that. I mean, that was 25 years ago, but I still feel that in me. So, Magnus, I'm really curious. I mean, I've shared one of mine. I'm sure you've had many. Is there anything that comes to mind for you with ceremony that's impacted you?
I was sitting thinking about that, and actually what really comes to me is not a ceremony as such, but I suppose it's more about a ceremonial object or ritualistic object that really became like a sort of magical, infused with so much more than word can say. And I was I did a 1-month Buddhist retreat many years ago. And most of it was silent, and it was in a place of nature. And towards the end of it was, you were in quite a stripped away. It was like a sort of death and rebirth. It was really intense, and I wanted to kind of get something from this retreat place to take with me as well back, but nothing felt quite right yet. And I had this long 3-day meditation, silence, and I kind of felt the spaciousness and emptiness of creation, and the sort of both the incompleteness of everything, but also the beauty of everything. And I walked out in nature, and there was all these massive dewdrops in the grass.
Oh, wow.
I've never seen anything like it. They looked like big glass beads, and it felt like they were sort of like the tears of nature, just like the tears I was feeling. And in the little shop there, they had these big crystal balls, that you have on the Buddhist shrine, which I think symbolized a lucid mind or like a spiritual, luminous mind. But they looked like these teardrops in the grass. So I got one still now, 20 years later, on my mantelpiece, and that speaks to me every day about so many things.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
So we've spoken about training, the being and sensibility. We spoke about ceremony, rites of passage. So the third pillar or spiral is communitas.
Yeah.
Because this can be a sort of journey you do on your own to some extent, but it's much more than that. And you spoke about being witnessed, and so how can we create an authentic sense of belonging with this work?
Yeah. There's so much to say on this, because first of all, the communitas pillar, I'll just describe a little bit about what this word means, because some people might not understand what communitas is. I mean, we understand community, but communitas is it's a Jungian word, so it's from the world of C.G. Jung. But it's a word that really describes, it really links in with the rites of passage piece, because it describes a space where we come together in community and in ceremony, and we create a liminal space where more than whatever is present can come in. That's the gist of communitas. So, I mean, if we were to just give a really simple example, if you think about a modern football match, I mean, I know, we don't do football matches, but a modern football match is a communitas space. So there's this kind of other energy that emerges from us all being together with an intention, with a purpose, and for us that's ceremony. So that's what communitas is for us at Soul Making in Nature, but it's also the result of a call. So the call in the previous work, so the work that we did in the previous organisation, one of the big calls, and one of the calls that Fee and Simon and Conran have kind of heard as well, is that people are feeling a sense of isolation and they're lacking belonging. And therefore communitas is very much about us coming together and purposefully creating spaces where we can be together in community, in deeply embodied, but also really real and honest community. It's not about going away to a retreat and having a wonderful time that then we go home and we're back in the everyday world, and it's split. This is about regular events. This is about regular meetings. It's about being in a liminal space, being in a space where we can do ceremony to who knows what that's going to be like. We might be able to help the planet just through the psychic connections that we've got with the planet. We might be able to help somebody move through a difficult time. We might be able to resolve some conflict. So communitas is very broad, but you talk about authentic belonging, and I think there's something about authentic belonging being grounded and embodied, but also about it being about adults coming together. So people who want to be responsible for themselves, it's not like a psychotherapeutic sort of, projection's going to happen anyway, but it's not going to be like we're coming into this community space so that we can recreate the family system. It's more than that. It's purposeful. And I think that's very much lacking.
Yeah. The way you talk about it feels like a verb, communitas, like something always ongoing, always moving, always changing.
Yes.
And I suppose also it's built into these three pillars. It's kind of built into it being something that will always develop and synthesize, as we call it, and emerge into something else.
Exactly.
So we will never be able to sort of say, this is what it is, and you're going to be taught this, and this is what it is, but it's always going to be something evolving. That we just
emerging.
sort of gently hold the
Yes.
space for. So it's very much about the people coming and what they bring.
It is, and the intention that they bring, the needs that they bring,
and then of course, you know, the soulful diversity of opposites, but also all the which been more awareness about the past 10 years perhaps about ethnicities and neurodivergence and LGBTQI, all that stuff as well. So we'll see what kind of family or communitas this will be. And we want to bring in all these.
We really do.
strands.
We want to make everything and everyone welcome, and the whole of the human experience. And we think about. I love the word queer, because I think for me queer is a very profound word in many ways. I mean, you talk about diversity and sexuality and neurodiversity and things, but there's a queerness, a natural queerness to nature.
Yeah.
And that natural queerness is, it can be mirrored back to us through nature. And can we help communitas to be a place where everything and everyone is welcome, but with respect, with boundaries, because I think that's really important as well.
We're sitting here talking about this, which we can do a long time, but it's actually not just a potential, but it's actually happening.
You're right.
Yes.
It is.
So when, where, what?
Yeah. When, where, what? Thank you, Magnus. Such a good. Yes. How can you two join in? So we've got our first launch event in October, and it's the 4th and 5th of October, where we are inviting the old community, if you like, the community that has been part of Soulmaking in Nature for 8-9 years, to come to our first communitas event, which is called The Return to Soulmaking. And that's happening in the Lake District in a beautiful valley called Longsledale, which is very off the beaten track. It's where we've worked for a number of years, and you know the place. If you would like to learn more about anything we've spoken about, you can go to the Soulmaking in Nature website, which is soulmakinginnature.co.uk. And everybody's welcome. I just want to say that this space is available to you.